once you know that darkness is going to be constantly trying to put out your light and stop you from accomplishing what you want to accomplish, writing, okay? Once you understand that and you surrender to the good side and say, listen, I get it. You're going to keep throwing these roadblocks in front of me. I'm just going to keep moving right over the top of them. You're not going to stop me.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage.
Okay, everybody. So, what happens when a former submarine serviceman becomes a holy man? When military precision meets mystical perception? Well, we're going to be chatting with D Paul Fleming, an author who doesn't just write about the supernatural, but lives in it. He's served on submarine that inspired Hunt for Red October. He's battled spiritual forces at a haunted inn, and he's gone from the depths of the ocean to the heights of spiritual warfare, unlike anything you've ever seen before. And his book, which we're going to be chatting about in this podcast today, Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn. It's a series, but and this one's going to be book one that we're going to be chatting about specifically. It's a story all about ghosts and how they communicate and the thin veil between our world and the next. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, D. Paul. It's great to have you on.
So, Danielle, thank you so much for having me as a guest on your show.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, of course. I think we're gonna have a really fun conversation. It's always cool to hear, different perspectives and experiences, especially in the supernatural realm, and how we translate that into the written word in the form of a book. So it's gonna be a good one. Before we chat about the book specifically, I think it's more for us to dive a little bit into your background and what brought you to writing about these spiritual experiences. How did you go from serving on a submarine to becoming what you describe yourself as a holy man? How did that happen? How was that transformation?
Well, the holy man comes from decades of practice and learning and reading and so on. And that term, a seasoned holy man, actually came from Granddaughter Crow, aka Dr. Joy Gray, a medicine woman out of the from the Navajo Nation. Love talking with her. She has a podcast and books and so on. Actually, one of her books was most
Oh,
recent book was Shamanism and the Shadow. So if you want to learn about yourself and the spirit world, that's a great book. But if you don't want your eyes to be open to what you are, you might not want to read it. It is a great book. Really,
okay.
really helpful.
That's really cool, and I love how you just kind of gave a little nudge to promote that one too. I think it's great that people are they can experience different versions of it regardless of what it is. So you're inspired by her book, but of course um, you shifted a little bit and you made it your own too. So tell me a little bit more about that. What drew you to this topic in particular and the Wyndham Inn as a setting?
Yeah, kind of like everything else in my life. As the longer I try to ignore something, the more the spirit world kind of knocks me upside the head and says, "You need to get this
Mhm.
done." Now, ironically, the Wyndham Inn, my latest book, the Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn, the Feral Feline, that one, I drive by that. I've driven by that for 30, 40 years. It's not far from my house. Um, but I've always seen the ghosts and the spirits in that place. And, you know, I can't tell you how many people I know have lived there at some point in their life. And then it eventually closed. And one of my friends from my elementary school days stopped by out of the blue and started talking about his experiences when he lived at the Wyndham Inn. He was talking about this cat that kept waking him up in the middle of the night, and he'd go crazy, and there was no cat there. And,
Wow.
he swore there was a cat and there wasn't. And as he's talking, the spirit world is talking to me, and I'm watching what he's talking about play out. Okay. And I just keep hearing the same voice saying, "You need to tell a story. You need to tell a story. You need to tell a story." And that's kind of how the long road to I'm kind of denying it for the longest time, and then eventually saying, "All right, I gotta write this book," and then it became fun. I'm already done with the second book and almost done with the final revisions of the last chapter of book 2 of the Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn. Um, so I was called to write this book and tell the story not just of the hanging of Miss Elizabeth, you know, but the rest of the ghosts that are in this building. There's a barmaid in there who wants her story told, and a lot of other people. Some are pretty tragic, and some of them are, some of them are pretty cool. There's a British soldier in there. There's a French soldier in that building from when the revolution took place, and the French sent an army. They landed in Newport, walked down Route 14, took a left right at the Wyndham Inn, or right where the Wyndham Inn property is, and somehow or another, I don't have the full story yet. Somehow or another, one of the French troops ended up, spending his eternity in the Wyndham Inn.
Wow. Well, that's really cool, and it's and you did research behind this, the fact that they went past the Wyndham Inn. That's kind of documented, then, isn't it? You did a little bit of digging.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's easy research, because not far from here is the Lebanon Green, and the Lebanon Green is where those French troops camped out, as for part of their journey to fight in the Revolutionary War.
Okay, well, really cool then. So not only is your book, kind of grounded in your experiences, but also in research too, and facts. So that makes it even more like it kind of just heightens what you're saying. You know what I mean? So people can, really get immersed into this world. Now, kind of diving into it a little bit more, then, you have a lot of really compelling characters. I was kind of flipping through a little bit. You have a character, Mary, Miss Elizabeth. I'm wondering if there's any history behind that, like a connection to historical injustice, or is that kind of just like a made up character? What do you think?
Oh no, it's not a made up character.
It's true.
Um,
Okay, okay. Tell me more.
in the mid 1700s, this young girl
Hmm.
was hanged, not once but twice. Okay,
Oh,
and as I say in the introduction, her father was in musket shot with a governor's pardon in his pocket when the noose stopped twitching. Okay, so
right.
and that was the second time, but she was hanged for something that didn't happen. She didn't. As the story goes, she had a baby out of wedlock and left the baby in the woods to
Mm,
freeze to death, or to be taken by the animals, and it just didn't happen. And in the course of telling this story, it's going to be revealed how and what really happened for the supposed hanging of her. And the reasons behind it are as classic as they always are: power and intrigue and spirituality and good versus evil. They all come to play on the Mysteries of the Windham Inn. And the last part that I'll throw in there. Um, Somebody asked me, why is it spelled mysteries with apostrophe s instead of ies? And they said, well, grammar and editing and so on. And I said, everything about this book is a mystery wrapped in a mystery. There's a
mm.
code to be deciphered in this book to find the treasures behind the secrets of the Wyndham Inn.
Okay, I like that. And it's really cool how you said that. That like there's secrets within secrets within secrets, and mystery within mystery. It's a lot to uncover and unpack, but I'm sure that keeps readers just on their tips of their toes, looking to see what's next. That's really
Yes.
cool. Um, and so I understand that within this book too, it's not just about that one experience with Mary, but there's lots of other factors, um, woven in too. I mean, there's another character, Master Gary, who's kind of like your everyman thrust into extraordinary circumstances, I guess you could say. And can you tell me more about that one? Is he also a character for mystery?
Well, Miss Elizabeth has been walking the grounds, the lands, the roads of the Wyndham Center community for almost 300 years. And there are just countless reports from the police to the volunteer fire department where people will see her on the side of the road and call, say there's a disheveled woman on the side of the road. Well, Master Gary is actually a friend of mine. He and I grew up together, who lived in the Wyndham Inn. And he's the guy that came to me out of the blue and said, started telling me about this cat that was waking him up in the middle of the night.
Mm.
So Master Gary and the Dazekan clan are actual living, breathing people who are caught up in this story because they spent time living at the Wyndham Inn.
Right. Okay. Really cool. And I think you have to tell me a little bit more about this research process then, because it's really cool that it's grounded in fact, but it seems like you're adding like these elements to really just bring the story to life. So what was that process like for you?
Well, since I'm an untrained novelist, everything I do is an adventure. You know, I mean, I'm self-taught on how to write and how to publish. So, again, everything I do is becomes an adventure. But for me, writing is more about listening to what, as I call the true ghostwriters, are telling me. Okay, so I'm sitting there and I'll type away, and I'll do what a writer does. But for the most part, the heart and the nature of this story come from actual ghost writers. So they tell me the story, I write it, and then of course I've got to make it all work.
Right, exactly. Okay, so it kind of have a team effort then going on, it sounds like.
One guy that's alive and able to type, and a bunch of spirits floating around telling me what happened, what went on.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's awesome. So, what's that collaborative process like? You kind of just interview them, or
Well, again, what I'm trying to emphasize here is these people that I'm
right?
talking to in interview are in the spirit world. They're not real.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, understood. Got it.
It's okay. I like to play it so close to the edge that people have to go, is that a real person or not?
Right.
Kind
Yeah, I
of.
thought you were talking about people who were like right there with you. Okay.
Well, Master Gary is a live person. Okay. So is
Right.
his brother. His brother's a character in the book. Okay.
Right.
But the story, from I get so much information from the living. If you go to my um, Facebook page, people will tell me stories from their time of living at the Wyndham Inn. And then I'll reach out to them and I'll listen to what they have to say. And I get as much as I can. And then I go and I plug into the spirit world and I find out from their side what they saw, what their opinion of what this person said or did or was telling me. And then I'll try to marry the two and put it in the narrative of the novel. So it truly is about, again, to understand how the spirit world works, you got to have faith, right? So you got to take some of this with faith and some of it with literary license, if you will.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, I like that. It's a good balance then in that regard. Um, so this is also, I just want to kind of branch out from this. This is a series then too, correct? So, have the other ones yet come out, or are you still in the process of those? What could be expected of the ones to come?
So you're going to love this, right? So book one,
Hmm.
October 1st, it's released. So you can buy it in a couple of days on Amazon. You can pre-order the KDP now, but the paperback's out October 1st. So I was all set to release book one and book two. And as I was going through the final edits for book two, I got stuck on the final chapter and I couldn't make it work. So I'm trying to figure out why. And I'm told you have to throw the whole final chapter away. You can keep this part, but you have to rewrite the whole thing. So the final chapter is half the size of the entirety of book two, right? So
Uh,
book two will be out later this year, and when you get to the ending of book one, and you're sitting there going, I can't believe he ended the book right here. Trust me, book two is not far behind.
Understood. Okay, well, really exciting. And is there a certain date out that we can be looking forward to that?
October 1st,
October
paperback book
1st?
one, and I'm targeting right now mid to late, probably December, to get book two finished through editing and published out to the public.
Wow, that's really, really exciting, and that's only like what, like a couple days from now. Very exciting. When this is released, it's really quick too. Really awesome. So yeah, guys, we're gonna put the links in the description box of this podcast, so you can go ahead and check that out. So I'd love to transition a little bit into the writing process itself because it must be really interesting to kind of blend these, experiences with storytelling and putting it down onto the paper. So can you tell a little bit about your process itself? Like, you mentioned how you gathered the stories, but what about like the planning aspect and the actual writing itself? Do you have a certain process for doing that?
Yeah, for me, I try to write 1,500 words a day. I like to stay engaged, and then when I get a little burnt out, I just kind of put it all down and walk away. But I like to target 1,500 words a day so that I can keep moving. Now, some days I do 500, some days I do a couple thousand. Some days it really flows, and other days, it is what it is. But for me, I've got to be in the right mental frame. I've got to feel the motivation to tell the story, and I like to feel everything I'm writing. I don't just like writing the words. I like to put the phrases in there and play with the sentences so that they
Right.
kind of snap at you and jump at you and go, man, what the heck does that mean? Right? Have words play on each other. But I like to have fun with it, is what I'm saying. If I sat down and said, listen, I need to do this for a business, I would lose all my interest. I mean, I really love telling the story. All right. And for somebody who's extremely dyslexic, it's an adventure to do the writing that I do. Okay.
Mhm.
Just takes a lot of extra editing to, kind of worm out the things that don't make sense.
Understood. Well, that's really cool. Then you play around with the words and find the ones that have that best snap. I like that you kind of said that. It's important. You can't just use the first phrase that comes to you, but find the one that is most impactful and will really catch the audience's attention the most. I like that you kind of trial and error it a bit. That's important to do. So moving forward from that, then I wonder. You said you were talking about how you were dubbed the holy man earlier on. Does that influence your approach to writing at all? Do you think?
Yeah. Everything that I do is, I don't want to say smothered in spirituality, but it's definitely painted with different size brushes. Certain parts of a story will have heavy influence on spirituality, and for the most part, the reader isn't aware that I'm lining so much of the story with spirituality. It's a story. But like in the Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn, when Miss Amy shows up for the first time in this particular matter, right? She gets instantly attacked by darkness, and a white light being has to swoop in and explain to her how to shake off the darkness that's trying to attach to her. Okay. Well, what she does is truly what I teach people to do to clear themselves from darkness, or to break connections from the wrong side of the tracks, if you will. So there's a lot of spiritual reality that's based in my shamanism or my holy man work, that is flooded in this book, or any of the books that I write.
Understood. No, thank you for kind of walking us through that. I think it's important for all authors to think about their identities and their like how people perceive them and kind of weave that into the book too, and their own experiences and beliefs. It's how you really get your own voice in there. Clearly, that's what you've been doing and what you've been balancing out as you work through it. So thanks for outlining that. But it seems to me like you have a pretty easy time writing. Then you don't seem to have any. Well, perhaps there were some challenges along the road, but it seems to come to you pretty naturally. Would you agree with that, or was there anything you might have struggled with along the way?
The one thing I struggle with is, again, my grammar is horrible. Okay.
Okay.
The basic editing stuff, I am horrible. All right. If it wasn't for a computer and all the autocorrect, I might as well just be writing in Greek with using a Russian alphabet, right? I would have no idea. So the hardest thing for me to do was to have confidence in what I'm writing. All right. And to, and when I finally came to my own personal Jesus moment, I said, listen, I'm not a writer, I'm a storyteller. So just tell the story and let the people that know how to edit do what they do best. Now, the editing part's always an adventure because these folks want to do things to the letter of the law, right?
Mm.
And again, like mysteries with apostrophe S, you got to understand that that's part of the clues to finding the treasures that go along with the mysteries of the Wyndham Inn. But from an editor's point of view, they're like, oh no, this has to be this way and this has to be that way. And I try to explain to them, listen, I don't know the difference between a pronoun and an adjunct professor. Okay. I'm a storyteller at heart, and that's what I try to focus on. So when I find myself getting into the areas of what other folks will call writer's block, I say to myself, go back to telling a story and just listen and type. Just
Mm.
trust your instincts and just get it all out there and then go back and just keep editing as you write this new stuff. So I don't have a flow. I don't know the endings to things, with some exceptions. My first book, 2,442 Steps to Crazy, that is a book that's written out of flat out my life's experiences. And then A Date with Suicide, again, that one was focused on the, the suicide pandemic that's going on, or epidemic that's going on in the veterans community. Okay. But those are the two books that kind of brought me into becoming an author, right? I needed to tell those stories to help others, and they have been. Those books have been tremendously helpful to others. And then the people that I know, the people I'm around, say, "Listen, man, you really know how to captivate the reader. People read your books; they're a fly on the wall. They feel it, they see it, they sense it, they know it, and they can't put your books down. You need
Right.
to go and do some other things." And that's where the Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn kind of materialized. Roughly 3 years ago is when the first time I kind of made the conscious decision where I said, "All right, I gotta follow this thought and start writing." And about a year ago is when I got serious on it, and then over the last 6 months, I really have put a lot of time into it.
Amazing. No, I think that's really great. And honestly, people are going to learn a lot from this information that you're giving them. I think that, any writer, especially the ones just starting out, don't really think about these aspects. But, clearly you have. And like kind of going back to what you said about how, you're not quite there with the grammar yet, right? But it's something to learn from, thank you for sharing that. Everybody has something they're struggling with. Everybody has something that they can grow from and learn from and eventually master. I'm sure that as you continue with your next books, it'll, get better because you're learning along the way too.
Yes, that's very well said. Very well said.
Yeah. So all this being said, I mean, a lot of the books do seem to, of course they revolve around the spiritual world, but there's also the theme of, the battle between good and evil, right? So I'm wondering, do you have a certain message that you'd like people to take away about that battle, about that approach?
Yeah, in a very um, broad sense, know that the battle of good and evil is as real as it gets. Okay. And in that essence, the devil has always said, we don't want you to think we're real, meaning evil. Okay. Again, one of the greatest tricks the devil ever pulled was getting people to believe that he didn't exist. Okay. So the battle of good versus evil is as real as it gets. And what I try to do is I try to walk people through events in my life or events in other people's lives where you can see, sense, taste, and feel that fight between good and evil, whether it's on a grandiose scale, the world, the universe, or whether it's on a micro scale of just yourself, right? That constant yin and yang, that constant pull and push of your own internal dialogue as it fights and struggles to figure out what to do next in life or what decision to make. And isn't it wild how the easy decisions tend to be on the evil side of things, the dark side of things? The hard decisions, right? Those are on the good side of things. And that's, again, the battle, right? It's easy to go and do it this way. We'll be rich and we'll do this and we'll cut corners. And over here, right? The opposite, you got to put the time in. You got to do the research. You got to have the awesome job that Danielle did in putting together the questions and the preparation for the work. You put the work in to be successful. You didn't take the shortcut of just say, click the on button and let's see what happens. Okay. So that's a micro version of good versus evil. Okay. The harder you work, the more good stuff's going to come your way. But you have to put your dues in. And when people put their dues in, I'm not saying bad things aren't gonna happen, because evil always wants to derail you. But once you understand that, and once you accept it, once you know that darkness is going to be constantly trying to put out your light and stop you from accomplishing what you want to accomplish, writing. Okay. Once you understand that, and you surrender to the good side and say, listen, I get it. You're going to keep throwing these roadblocks in front of me. I'm just going to keep moving right over the top of them. You're not going to stop me. That's where I was with writing. I was arguing with myself that I wasn't smart enough. I didn't have the education. I barely got out of high school. Okay. All the reasons why I couldn't become a successful writer. And then there was one thing left. I'm a pretty good storyteller and I'm funny as hell, Danielle. Okay. So as hard as it is to believe, the humor that's in this book or my other books is staggering. I can talk about darkness and evil in one breath and crack a joke the next that'll have you laughing for 5 minutes. That's a gift.
Yeah, it is. And, speaking of that humor telling, a lot of people think that they're funny. How do you know for sure? You've heard it before, you've tested it out in the in real life. I think I'm just asking. I talked to a comedian once and he said that he has to kind of test out his jokes first. Is that part of your storytelling process too, or how does that work?
Yeah. So oh man, my poor wife, I'll be sitting there typing away and I'll be laughing just like you're
Sorry, go
doing now,
ahead.
Danielle. I'll just start laughing, right? And then I'll look at her and I'll say, baby, I'll read it to her. And she's like, that's not funny. I'm like, what? I thought it was funny as hell. She's like, no, it's not even close to being funny. All right. And then she'll be proofreading for me or doing something. And she'll say, oh my God, was that funny? And she'll tell me what was funny. And I'm like, I didn't write that to be funny. She goes, yeah, but it is.
Mm.
So on the funny part, it's up to the reader. Because again, there's stuff in there that I think is hilarious. And there's stuff in there that others find hilarious that I don't see the humor in it. So I've learned to just trust my instincts, tell the story, and let the reader figure out what is funny, what isn't funny.
Right. Yeah, that's I like to ask that because you're right. You got to kind of just let your own voice in there first, and then everything else just kind of comes as it goes. And that's funny that you mentioned your wife too.
Yeah, you say voice. I had my second book coming out, and I keep getting these people saying, "Yeah, your voice, your voice, your voice," and I thought it was just you know people being nice. And I'm like, I've never talked to these people. How can they know what my voice is? It wasn't until I was getting deep into the mysteries of the Wyndham Inn that some editors were saying to me, Doug, you don't understand what voice is, do you? And I said, other than speaking out loud, no. She's saying, no, no, no. It's the voice that you come across as the reader or as the writer to the reader. And I'm like, oh, didn't know that was a thing. And I said, yeah, it's kind of being an author 101. It's one of the first things you learn is how to command your voice. Right.
Mm.
So again, I'm sitting here as an accomplished author where I'm still learning the basics about what it is to be an author. And I don't want to get too deep in becoming a classically trained author. I kind of like myself and set in my old ways, so I'm going back to what we talked about earlier. I'm a good storyteller. Now I'm just fortunate enough to have these things get published.
Got it. No, you are, and I think that that just goes to show from the series that you have out, the following that you have. It's clear that everything that you've experienced and all of the your trials and errors in the process of writing, it's all accumulated to this. And here you are, getting the message out there, sharing sharing your side of the spiritual world with everybody out there. And I think everyone's really excited for the next book in this series too. So, that being said, I guess I'm wondering if you have any other pointers or bits of advice for the audience as we begin to wrap up today. Anything that you'd like to leave them with to inspire them as they continue on with their day?
Yeah, listen to that voice inside of you. Okay. That voice inside of you is truly protected against the darkness. It's the
Mhm.
voice that's out here that wants to deter you from listening to that inner voice. And if that inner voice is telling you to write something, expect that as you move forward, you're going to get resistance. But listen to that inner voice and just push every day to do something, one thing. Pick a word count, 100 words, 500 words. And if you can't find your way to write that day, then edit or research. But write it down. Keep a journal. Keep a note of what you're doing so you can go back and look at it. I've probably got 10 or 15 journals tossed all over the place that I started and then made it through whatever it was I was trying to get through, and it became obsolete. So I really encourage folks to just take notes on yourself. It does two things. One is it keeps you moving, makes you feel guilty internally if you don't, right? Because you've got notes that say, I'm going to keep writing in 1,500 words and so on and so on. Okay.
Right.
But listen to that inner voice and keep pushing forward.
Keep pushing forward. That's a great note to leave people with. I think it's important. You can't just give up. You can't just make excuses. You gotta keep pushing forward. Keep writing each day. Set yourself goals and make it part of your schedule. That's the only way the book's gonna get out there. And I guess if people are having trouble, doing that, then they can always find resources here at the Authors on Mission website. We have resources for that. Paul, I'm sure you have maybe some type of resources for authors in your media too, perhaps. I'm sorry, that's a wild guess. I know you mentioned we have a website people can check out.
Well, I don't, but I'm happy to direct them to your
Oh,
website, Danielle.
okay, thank you. Sorry. So then where's the best place for people to find you then and to learn a little bit more about what you're up to?
So the easiest way to track me down is on Facebook.
On Facebook,
Um,
okay.
I'm on X, but Facebook seems to be the place where this type of stuff resonates the best. I've got a pretty decent following that's growing, and I don't do a lot with it. I just talk about the books and
Right.
connect with people. So you can hit me up there, or you can reach out to me directly at dpaul at blackhawkbooks.com. There's if you want to talk author stuff, if you want to talk spiritual stuff in the book, let me know.
Perfect. Okay. Well, yeah, sorry to throw you under the bus there. Sometimes I'm curious people do like, offer that sort of thing, but we also do too. So guys, you can check out the Authors on Mission website then for tips and tricks and head on over to all Paul's connections so you can get in the know and get in touch too. So amazing stuff. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about the writing world and the spiritual world. I think we've covered a ton, and we could be looking forward to that new book releasing super soon. So thanks for joining us.
Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn, Feral
Love it.
Feline. You're gonna love it. Keep the
You know,
faith. Moving forward.
awesome, awesome. Here to hear everybody. So with that, just, check out the books and remember the next time you feel like you're a lot alone in a room, you might be right. So check out the books to learn more about that supernatural side of things. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and I guess maybe keep the lights on if you feel a little spooked. All right, well, have a good day, everybody.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.